It is time for Political Breakfast. 'Tis the season for a flock of names to start getting tossed around as a possible candidate for this or that. This week, there are two in particular to talk about. U.S. Georgia Representative Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene and Democratic State Senator Jason Esteves. Standing by live this morning are Republican strategist Brian Robinson and Democratic strategist Tharon Johnson. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Brian and Tharon. Brian, up you first. Marjorie Taylor Greene is said to be considering a run for either senator or governor. Does either make sense to you?
Well, it certainly seems like she's got more of a lane in the Senate race. She's become a presence in Washington. She seems to focus mainly on federal/national issues. Not someone you've heard talk a lot about the state issues that are going on, and in many ways are quite distinct from the national conversation, of which she has figured out a way to ride the wave. Whenever something is breaking, whenever something is kind of hitting the cultural pulse, she's got her finger on it, and she's developed a huge following. She has proven that she can be a tremendous fundraiser. Just using social media will make money flood in for her. She has universal name ID, which is unheard of today when it comes to members of the House of Representatives. And she's a close ally of President Trump. So those are things that would set her up well in a primary of Republican voters. But I think that it would be a challenge for her in a general election against a sitting U.S. Senate incumbent.
But the Senate role would be a natural progression for her?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen her in the issues that she talks about are very much federal, and we haven't seen her develop a profile of state issues, and they are different, and it's a different level of expertise. I mean, it's a different kind of expertise is a better way of saying it. So I'm not saying she can't. She's obviously proven herself to be a talent who is quick on her feet when it comes to communications. But when it comes to what she knows and to where her real assets are, it's a federal issue tableau we're looking at.
Tharon, Jason Esteves has interest in the governor race as well. He's well-liked, but not a household name just yet. What do you think his chances could be?
I think that anybody right now who is elected in any office, whether it's local, state, or federal, and is a Democrat and has any ambition, they're all thinking about running for governor. And now whether they decide to actually pursue that office is another thing. And so what's really happened now, State Senator Jason Esteves has decided while he's in legislative session to explore the possibility of him running for governor. Now, what's interesting about Jason, I met him probably 12 years ago. We both worked at McKenna Long and Aldrich. He's a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. And you kind of knew instantaneously, Lisa, when you're talking to a young leader who's very passionate about policy and education and children. A lot of folks don't know this. He ran unsuccessfully first for state representative, but then he was elected to the school board, and he went on to be the chair of the school board. And then he stepped up and ran for state senate. So he's known in the Senate as a Democrat, a sensible Democrat that can work with Democrats, of course, to get things done for his district, but also Republicans have found ways to work with him as well. And so he's introduced some good pieces of legislation. Now, the question is, how does he raise the money? How does he raise his profile when we have some very other prominent Democrats who are thinking about it as well? He also has received previous support. He's been a big supporter of Stacey Abrams. I think they have a good working relationship. I think everybody's got to wait and see what she decides to do, whether she runs or who she supports. He's also a leader in the Democratic Party of Georgia. So he is out there. I mentioned his name now a few times, and we just have to see what will happen while he's in session, if he's going to introduce or be a part of any sort of legislation that could be very helpful to him trying to embark on this potential campaign.
Former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom put her name out there as a possible gubernatorial candidate. What did you hear about that in the Democratic circle?
One thing I would say about Keisha is that, again, a person who ran for office the first time for judge, did not win, and won a very impressive city council race to succeed the late, great Jim Maddox, and went on to win a mayoral race. Lisa, you covered that race. And so I think you cannot count anyone out, and especially Keisha. the former mayor who went on to work for Joe Biden and served him honorably. And she got a little bump when President Trump decided to tweet out that she was fired, and she published a letter showing that I had already resigned. You can't fire someone who's resigned. But, we're going to be fair in this podcast, and I know that Brian has been, sort of critical of her. She does have some tough questions to answer. And I think that, her team around her will ask her those tough questions. She's got to be prepared. But if she decides to run, I think that she's credible. She's a former mayor. She's got name recognition, and I think she can raise some money.
Brian, I feel you biting your lip there.
No, I agree with what he is saying there. And I think the strength of Keisha Lance Bottoms is this is a primary where the loudest voice, the most influential voice, are those of Black female voters. So if you are the most well-known Black female candidate in the race, that's good for a number of points that will keep you in the race and maybe throw you into a runoff. So that's something you can't overlook. Jason Esteves and I were in Leadership Georgia together. He is a wonderful guy. Was with him at a party Saturday night for our kids' school. And he's very thoughtful. One benefit, he's very tall. People like tall candidates too. He's like 6'5". That's good for a few points as well.
All right, quickly, Brian, at one point there was a lot of pressure on Governor Brian Kemp to run for Senate. Is that still in play?
Yes. Governor Kemp is certainly the strongest candidate. We saw polling in Politico by a third-party group showing that he was beating Ossoff by a fairly healthy number, about 8 points, outside of the margin of error, and that no other candidate up against Ossoff was in the lead, or at least not in any significant way. So he's certainly the strongest candidate. But again, I say this until I'm blue in the face. Going from the governorship of Georgia to the U.S. Senate is a step down, and it comes with much fewer perks and a lot more headaches and a lot less ability to get things done. Brian Kemp gets getting things done, and he's got a great record of accomplishment. It'll be very frustrating for him in the U.S. Senate, but the pressure on him to run will be enough to turn coal into diamonds.
Brian Robinson, Tharon Johnson, thank you always for your perspective and getting up this early and checking in Morning Edition. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Amplifying Atlanta, this is listener-funded WABE.